Well, I asked, where's the beef? Let's call this for what this is. Oh my God! They are so hopelessly woke. How dare you? That is the intellectual capital of the left today. Give me a break. You are now watching the Daily Roundup.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Daily Roundup on this, a Thursday, September 21st, 2023. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little bit about my co-host. Folks, do you know that today is International Miniature Golf Day? And my co-host does not celebrate this day because mini golf is sexist, and I'll explain what I mean by that later. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How are you doing there, Sheila?
I'm dying to know how mini golf is sexist. I don't think you should make the rest of us wait either. Do we have an audio problem for me? No.
No,
yes,
I'm
no. Okay. Yeah, I want to know, how is mini golf somehow the latest victim of the ire of the cancel culture left?
Well, Sheila, unlike you, I'm not just another pretty face here at Rebel News. I actually do some research, okay? And I researched the invention of mini golf, and it goes back to 19th century Victorian Scotland. And get a load of this. I always thought mini golf was invented for kids, to let the kids have some fun, create miniature fairways and whatnot. But no, miniature golf was an invention for the female of the species, because if you go back to that
too
point...
delicate.
Pardon me?
We're too delicate?
No, it was considered, I kid you not, it was considered unladylike for a woman to raise a golf club above her shoulders. So therefore, you could not play golf. It would be impossible to drive the golf ball. So instead of, changing the rules and saying, you know what? It's not really that unladylike. Go ahead, ladies, go golfing. No, we're going to create this little miniature golf course so you never have to raise a golf club over your shoulders. Yeah, I'm not kidding you.
Holy heck, that's ridiculous.
I know.
That's
unbelievable.
Fascinating. The lengths to which society used to go to cater to us pretty little ladies. It was a different time. They invented an entire sport for us so that we didn't have to raise our arms above our heads, and they tell me chivalry is dead. I guess it might be.
Do you know, isn't the perverse irony in the last 200 years amazing, Sheila? As you just said, we went out of our way to invent a new sport, mini golf, to prevent women from causing a scandal by raising their arms over their shoulders. And now here we are in 2023, where we have achieved equality in terms of male and female sports, where there's separate divisions, where the gals are going all out to win medals and compete at their prime efficiency. And suddenly it's become a great idea to allow male loser athletes into the fold to destroy female sports. It's almost as though women in the sporting world have had it so horrible, depending on what century in one respect, like golf, you're segregated to playing mini golf, a kid's game. And today, if that chick you're going up against in the rugby field actually has a penis and muscles and an Adam's apple, get over it, girl. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Unbelievable.
What a time to be alive. I just think, what would my great-grandmother say?
She'd probably use a golf club on that guy.
Great-grandma Gun? Probably, for sure. It's also National Cat and Dog Gut Health Awareness Day. So if you're a cat or dog puking all over your house, this day's for you people. Thanks. We should tell everybody what we're doing here because... Yes. It's a real packed pierogi of a day, as they say out here on the prairies. Just a wild and crazy day in Canadian politics. And boy, did we ever at Rebel News fulfill our journalistic mandate to tell the other side of the story, because tens of thousands of Canadian parents took to the streets of Canadian cities yesterday. I think probably the single largest simultaneous protest I've seen in a very long time. And we did live through the Freedom Convoy in 3 years of protesting COVID mandates, but just the sheer numbers of people that were out across all demographics, across all socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds, and I think across all party lines, by the way. They were out protesting against the sexual indoctrination of children in Canadian schools as part of the 1 million March for Children yesterday. We had journalists all across the country, so we need to talk about that today. But if you get all your news from the mainstream media, and God help you if you do, there were hundreds of people in Ottawa yesterday and not tens of thousands. Like, just thanks, CBC. As long as they remain terrible, though, we'll have a job here at Rebel News. But this is the Rebel News Daily Roundup. It's hosted by my friend David Menzies and a rotating cast of characters. Today, I am the character, co-hosting with David, and we talk about the news of the day, or in this case, the news of yesterday, completely unscripted and in a spontaneous way. And we also give our viewers a chance to A, get involved, and B, support the work that we do here completely willingly. So if you're watching us on the censorship platform of YouTube, okay, fine. There are 1.6 million sets of your eyeballs over there. We don't want to abandon you, but if you'd like to engage in the rigorous debate that we do here in the comment section at Rebel News, might I suggest migrating over to Rumble or Odyssey, two platforms that don't really care about your politics, which is exactly how I want it. And if you are on Rumble or Odyssey, you can leave a paid chat. On Rumble, it's called a Rumble Rant. On Odyssey, it's called a Hyper Chat. If it's over $5 US, well, friends, we are obligating ourselves to read it on air, but that doesn't mean that that's the hard cutoff for your comments. Sometimes if the comment dollar value falls below that, if we got time, we just might read it. And sometimes we even read the interesting free chats too. So get chatting and you might just see your comment replied to on air by myself and my friend David Menzies. I think that's it. David, let's start the show.
Yeah, and Sheila, I'm so glad that, as you mentioned, it was all hands on deck for the Rebel News team right across Canada yesterday, covering the 1 million March for Children demonstrations, plural, because once again, the mainstream media didn't let me down when it comes to wokeism and lying and propaganda. Sheila, if I come across one more headline in which it is stated that yesterday's event was all about an anti-LGBTQ protest. That's how they frame this narrative. They know damn well that's not what this was about. This was about indoctrination in schools, indoctrination over education. This was about the radical trans agenda being embraced. This was about the kind of reading materials getting into schools, which I think meet the benchmark for pornography. And I'm talking about elementary school libraries. That's what it was. It wasn't about going after individuals or a group of individuals, but that is how it was framed. And I guess, Sheila, any surprise?
No, and through the lies, they whipped up violence, right? Like through the media's lies and the left's lies, although I think I'm repeating myself there, and the union call to oppose these peaceful demonstrations of parents. Like, look at this. CBC reports this as hundreds. Like, what? But these are new Canadians. It's not just Christians. I mean, at one point at the march in Regina, I thought maybe Sikh temple had let out. Like, there were so many new Canadians there. Sikhs, Muslims, Christians, agnostics, atheists, grandparents, children. By the way, this is my favorite. Andy Fillmore is the Liberal MP from, I think, Halifax, putting his foot right in his big yap, saying, you may notice some far-right bozos marching in the streets today under the ruse of standing up for Canada's kids. Don't fall for it. This is what bigots do. They mask their hatred under the cover of fake causes because they know we won't accept it for what it really is, hate. And then so I took some these are photos that I took in Regina. These are far-right bozos, according to the Liberals. Oh, more far-right bozos. And look at these far-right bozos. And we might even have another. Maybe I just had 3 photos there because I was sort of on the fly. I drove home from Regina late last night.
You know what, Sheila, on that point, the left is all about, they say, diversity, equity, inclusion. I'll tell you my experience. I was in Toronto at Queen's Park. And I will tell you, hands down, even if you're a hardcore leftist and you're shown photographs of the demonstration and the counter protest, when it came to diversity, the Million March for Children was far more diverse. We're talking, as your photo showed, Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, you name it. And yet, I'll tell you, the counter protest, it seemed to be almost exclusively white young liberals, right?
Yeah, white middle class white liberals who can afford to not be at work or at school on a Wednesday afternoon, which means these are well-kept, privileged weirdos who think it is their right to have secrets with other people's children. That's what this comes down to. Remove everything else. If a parent says, don't talk to my kid about sex, you should listen. And if you don't listen, you're a weirdo and I want to see the contents of your computer. These people are calling you a hater if you won't allow strangers to talk to your kids about sex. That's what this is about.
Oh, and I think it goes further than that, not just talking, but with the counter protesters, their idea that there should not be any age limit on a child transitioning, you know, when it comes to puberty blockers, when it comes to hormone therapy, even when it comes to the most invasive thing of all, which would be surgery on the genitalia of these children. And yet, Sheila, look at everything in our society that has an age restriction. Tobacco, alcohol, lottery tickets, driver's licenses,
tattoos,
voting.
Piercings.
There you go. And suddenly, children that don't even have a say in terms of what's on the dinner menu and what time we're going to eat dinner, suddenly they should be entitled with the ability to say at, I don't know, 8 years old, you know what? I'm a gal trapped in a boy's body. I need to go on the fast track to transitioning. Now, here's the thing, Sheila. Why the rush? Children, we know, go through phases, right? That's undisputable. Maybe, just maybe, we should wait until they're the age of majority, 18, because that 8-year-old that's saying that now, in a decade from now, might be a totally different cat. And my point of view, if you want to be a man pretending to be a woman or vice versa.
I don't care.
I don't care. I care about one thing. Do it on your own dime. You're not going into the healthcare system, right? Because that's the other perversity here, the entitlement that they get their surgery paid for. Whereas if you have people that maybe a guy wants a nose job to help his self-esteem, maybe a woman wants a boob job to help her self-esteem, that's on your dime. That's the way it works, and that's the way it should work. But I don't want the state paying for that. But at the bottom line, if you want to live your life as a, well, I guess Halloween 365, go for it. We have freedom. But as those demonstrators said over and over and over again, Sheila, get your hands off our kids.
Yeah. Imagine a day and age where we have to take to the streets to keep strangers from talking to our kids about sex. When they're 4, when they're 5, you know what, hell, when they're 17. I don't want you talking to my 17-year-old daughter about any of this stuff either. But moreover, to your point, why do they do this when the kids are young? It's because these people are a bit of a self-fixing problem, right? They're, biologically speaking, they're self-sterilizing through cross-sex hormones and mutilating surgeries upon themselves. They've also decided that we can't have children because of climate change, overpopulation, whatever. So they are a bit of a self-alleviating problem, right? Like there's no second generation of this. So what they have to do is infect other people's children with the mind virus. It's like you have to bite another zombie to make another zombie. You can't just give birth to another zombie. That's what's happening here. So that's why they need to get their hands on our kids, is because they're not having their own.
I agree with what you said, Sheila, but I think it goes further than that. I'm not exaggerating at all when I say we are seeing Marxism in action. The teachers' unions and the school boards and the public sector unions, it's taken decades, but they have been infiltrated. I can't even call them progressives or far left. These are Marxists. And Marxism...
I was just going to say, I don't think they've been infiltrated, but I'll get back to my point. I'll let you finish yours.
Yeah, I just feel, Sheila, this is Marxism 101 in action, i.e. attack the nuclear family. Secondly, tear down societal norms and rebuild society as a Marxist utopia, which never happens. Just go to Cuba or North Korea or Venezuela if you want the proverbial proof in the pudding. And this is what we're seeing. And I find it egregious and outrageous that publicly funded unions were doing everything they could in the last several days of this month, leading up to yesterday, to bang the war drums, come out and challenge hate. They keep using the word hate. They keep using the phrase, love trumps hate. Let me tell you, before you get to your point, Sheila, I'll tell you what I observed yesterday. First of all, we went to the counter demonstration. They were gathered at the south lawn of Queen's Park.
You know what? Maybe, sorry, Efron, can you roll the second video from Toronto as David's talking, so we can just roll the viz as he's talking, so we can see what he's referring to.
Already?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out where this is right now. I think that this must have been earlier on, but the point I was getting to, Sheila, the counter protest took place on the south lawn of Queen's Park. And I would estimate about 600 meters away or so on the north lawn, the Million March for Children demonstrators, that's where they stayed. And there was no interaction at first. But after about an hour of ranting and raving, the counter demonstrators, first it was drips and drabs, and then it was a few thousand, came to the north lawn, and they're entitled to do that. But you could tell they were using fear and intimidation tactics. They were completely encircling the protest, and they were chanting all kinds of vulgar phrases. They were, as the saying goes, wearing trouble on their shirts. And I'll tell you one thing, Sheila, if it hadn't been for the Toronto Police Service, their rank and file, of setting up a perimeter with their bicycles, sort of a temporary fence, those LGBTers were going to keep going closer, and it would be like a vice coming in, and inevitably they were looking for a physical confrontation. I am completely certain of that.
Sure they were.
And thankfully, none of the demonstrators, that's the Million March for Children demonstrators, none of them took the bait. None of them threw a haymaker. And good on the Toronto Police Service for keeping order that day. For I will tell you this, Sheila, if they weren't there, it would have been a Donnybrook.
Yeah, I had a much different experience in Regina, and we'll get to that. But, these unions were doing their very best to incite violence against these parents. They were organizing, they were putting it out to their street teams and using words like hate and white supremacy and bigotry. And when you tell that to somebody who lives their life on the internet saying, oh, punch a Nazi, but the supply of Nazis never quite meets the demand, then the union is identifying parents as Nazis. This is your chance to go finally live your dream to punch a Nazi. And so, that's a call to violence against these parents. And thankfully, it didn't get to that extent in Toronto, although it did get that way in other places. And we'll get to that in a second. And the city of Toronto itself, a government. So supposed to be, a government for all the people. Or not just the people with whom they disagree or who are on their side of the political spectrum. They send out a tweet. The city of Toronto Stands with the 2S LGBTQ plus. I wish they could get it right, like day, month, year. Like, get it right, please. They put this 2S in the front, sometimes in the back. It's very confusing for me. Anyways, they stand with the alphabet communities and youth. There is no place for transphobia and intolerance in our city, and everyone should feel safe in being their authentic selves. I guess if you're a socially conservative parent, then you are not allowed to be yourself. Today, the trans flag was raised at City Hall.
Oh, wow. And, you know, and by the way, speaking of these phony fake flags, there's that trans flag, then there's the pride flag, then there's the progress pride flag, which has black and brown stripes in it because that represents black and brown people. So suddenly sexual orientation and gender identification, now it's a race thing too. And by the way, where's, I guess, I don't know, a color for Asian people? How come they're out in the cold in that? And then we have the Pride Progress Plus flag with the little purple flurple. I think that's for the intersex people. I'll tell you, Sheila, in our lifetime, there is going to be so many symbols on that flag that it'll be a dog's breakfast. It will be the Pontiac Aztec of flags, okay, with all the special interest groups they're trying to accommodate. But I'll tell you something, Sheila. What I noticed with the counter-protests, I saw all these phony baloney fake flags. I did not see a single Canadian flag. Maybe there was one and I missed it. But, you know, I'm sure this group looks upon the maple leaf as a hate symbol. I know from speaking to those in the freedom movement, typically who have pickup trucks, and in the bed of the pickup truck have a hockey stick with a maple leaf flag flying from it. They tell me right across the board, Sheila, not a day goes by when they're just driving their truck down the street, minding their own business, and somebody passes them with the raised middle finger. Because a Canadian flag is being displayed by a Canadian in Canada? That's hateful? This is the mindset of these lunatics that made up the counter-protest yesterday.
You know what? Let's show that video again with the sound up, that video from Queen's Park. In much the same way that the Canadian flag just triggers these people into nonsense. When they see a crucifix, they lose their marbles like a bunch of demons, like vampires. Let's show this.
Home Jesus, Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Did you hear that? That guy, the guy on the bike says to the guy holding the cross, "You're a demon." I've never seen a bunch of people so triggered by a man saying the rosary. You know, if he had said it in Latin, I'm sure those people would have started vomiting and their heads spinning around.
Yeah, well, you know, Sheila, I'll tell you, and I'm not exaggerating, when we went to the counter-protest with the whole Spirit Unicorn community, honestly, the way they present themselves, it was like if Arkham Asylum was real, this was a jailbreak, okay? I mean, if somebody walked by wearing a green suit with black question marks all over it, I wouldn't have batted an eyelash. So there's Joker, there's Poison Ivy, there's Clayface. And these people, I'm sorry to say this, I'm not trying to be funny and I'm not trying to be mean. My spidey senses in terms of mental illness were tingling greatly. These are people in need of psychiatric care. And, you know, typically when we do stories about trans individuals, and I'm talking Jonathan Yaniv and I'm talking Ash Davis, and I'm talking Busty Lemieux. These are reprehensible people in dire need of a psychiatrist, and they should get mental health. Instead, somehow, society has been bent that we are literally allowing the lunatic fringe to set the narrative, and that to criticize these people, like I said, most of which I think are mentally ill, just to bring that up, you're the one who is the hater. You're the one who is mentally ill. You're the one that has to be sat down on a couch with a mental health professional and cured of your wrong thinking. It's absolutely astonishing how we got to this point, Sheila.
Oh, and it's also astonishing how, I don't want to say idiotic some people are, but so gullible they are to believe the mainstream media when the mainstream media tells you what these protests were about. They're saying it's transphobia, it's this, it's that. And, you know, I interviewed a lady in Regina yesterday who's a lesbian. Like, she's like, I'm an open, proud lesbian, and I was out since, I think it was like 1981, she said. So she's been in the game a long time, and she was a lesbian when it was not popular to be a lesbian. And she's like, last year we had a gathering of our, like, a lesbian community in BC, and she said, you know who was the keynote speaker? A man claiming to be a lesbian. And she's like, they won't even let us be lesbians in a lesbian space. We have to allow men now. And she said, when I spoke out, they told me to leave.
Well, that's why we have groups such as Gays Against Groomers and groups such as LGB without the T, because there is a growing number of gay men and lesbian women waking up to the fact that the radical trans movement is not just about erasing biological males and females, it's about erasing gays and lesbians. That person, that boy who thinks he's a girl at the age of 9 and is hell-bent on getting surgery and hormones and all the rest of it, Sheila, well, maybe by the time he passes puberty, he realizes, you know what, I'm not a trans person, I'm a gay person. And they, you know, these people that are part of the two groups I just mentioned, Sheila, they realize that this is a war on gays and lesbians, at least some of them do, and they want no part of this radical lunatic fringe.
Yeah. I'll talk to you about Regina, because my experience in Regina was much different than everybody else's experience in the rest of the country. But moreover, to your point, like, I was a tomboy, and apparently those people don't exist anymore. If you are a tomboy, you have an activist teacher and a Munchausen by proxy mom telling you to take cross-sex hormones and cut your boobs off. To this day, you know, I still enjoy hunting, shooting, archery, dirt bikes, quadding, the fun stuff in life, the good stuff in life, being outdoorsy. Like, look at me right now. I'm wearing a vintage Coors Banquet rodeo hoodie, you know, and I understand, like, when you're a tomboy doing tomboy things and running around and doing sports, and then all of a sudden your body starts changing and you're like, I don't like this. Luckily for me, it didn't change all that much, but I can understand why it would be difficult for other women. But once you, like, get through the fact that your body's doing all sorts of crazy things and it's disorienting, once you get through the other side, you're like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. And I'm a mom with 3 kids, and life is good. And I'm so glad that I grew up in the day and age that I did, as opposed to now, where girls who were like me would be, well, frankly, made to comply with the gender binary. These people say they're against the gender binary, but once you start to, like, get into the gray parts of behavior on that, they're like, you're the other sex, let's operate.
Sheila, this is a very important and profound point you're making. And it just shows you how society has changed so much. Remember way back in yesterdecade, homosexuality, the love that dare not speak its name. Well, now you can't get it to shut the hell up. And you know what? It wasn't right that people were living their lives in the closet. But I would say this to tomboys. I would say this to young girls who like to do male-oriented things, and that is, You stay in the closet. You don't make a display of it in front of the progressives and the Marxists, because like what you said, they're going to, frame that as this is obviously a male child trapped in a female body. So you go out into the hinterland, you go out to your backyard and do your tomboying in private, because otherwise the gender benders are going to come for you. Isn't it amazing how society has flipped on this issue, Sheila?
Yeah, and so fast, like overnight, it feels like.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to what happened in Regina, because there's a reason I went to Regina. It was like a 15-hour drive.
Oh, I know that reason, because I'm contractually obliged not to talk about Regina.
There are a lot of people after Regina's marketing campaign who are not allowed to talk about Regina. Anyway, I went there because unlike the rest of the country, with the exclusion of New Brunswick, Regina is standing up for parents. And standing up for parents, Regina, I say Regina as in the government in Regina, the government of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe's Conservative Saskatchewan Party. They have not only said that they're going to do a complete and total re-examination of all the materials used in their schools, and let parents decide what is being taught to their kids in school. But they are also saying, look, if the activists and the unions try to drag us to the Supreme Court on this, and the Supreme Court, who tend to be activists as well, side with the activists, will invoke the notwithstanding clause, so the constitutional nuclear button. And they said they will not be overridden because they're acting in the interest of parents. So I went there because things are different there. And I wanted to know, okay, Regina is a heavily unionized city, thanks to decades of the NDP being in power there. And they still have a lot of Crown corporations, so a lot of people work for the public sector in Saskatchewan. And they are leading the country on this issue, and they're standing up to the unions. They're not listening to the mainstream media and the other side of this whatsoever. They're only listening to parents, which is how it should be. And I wanted to know, okay, are the unions going to be wild there? Because I thought that this is where the fight is right now. And when I went there, and I'm following along with all my colleagues across the country, and I went there and I see 2,000 parents, like March for Life numbers, walking down the street, and from all backgrounds. And you know what the opposition was? Roughly 5 trans cat types on the steps of the legislature. No kids. They don't have any kids with them. It's just there. And half of those are other people's grandparents telling them to go home and get that purple dye out of their hair. Like, this was the opposition in Regina. And I was like, why is it like this? And you know why? Because all is lost for the unions there. They've lost. They've completely lost. Parents have won. They aren't fighting there anymore. And so there's a lesson in there for Ontario, for Alberta, for Manitoba. If you take on the unions and refuse to back down, the unions will just go away and they won't come and fight you once you've said, there's no fight here. The parents have won. It was really something to see.
I'm looking at the visuals there, Sheila, and to use one of your favorite words you've dredged up from the 70s, I don't see any weirdos. I see nice, clean-cut, civil people, and they're not screaming, and they're not getting hysterical, and they're not lobbing F-bombs, which is what the counter demonstration yesterday in Toronto, that's all they could do. I tried to get their side of the story, because you'd think a counter protest, that's what they're there for. You're holding a sign in public, and I go, hey, how you doing, my friend? What brings you out here? F off, right? And it's like you can't even articulate why you're there. Oh, I see. Your union rep told you to get your ass out there and hold up a sign saying God knows what. Yet you've never even researched what the issue is. It was deplorable. And yet you go to the Million March demonstration for children, Sheila, and they're civil, they're good-hearted, they can articulate a point of view. Why is it always that way? It's just when you see the pro-abortion and pro-life groups, it's heaven and hell every time.
Yeah. And like as we just saw in those imagery there, Christian women walking shoulder to shoulder, with Muslim women in their religious garb, but completely united on this issue. And they're saying we refuse to be divided. Divided. You can call us, as Ralph Klein said, every stinking name in the book, and it doesn't matter. I talked to moms yesterday who said, look, it's our job as mothers to jump in front of a speeding car to save our children, and this is the speeding car. Gender ideology is the speeding car that is coming to kill our children, and either now or later.
I'll tell you, Sheila, this is a huge tectonic shift we are witnessing with Muslims and Christians getting together. This was not the case 10 years ago, but
nope.
So egregious is the radical trans ideology in schools that this has brought two diverse groups hand in hand. I mean, you wouldn't have seen this a decade ago. No chance. But this is a trend, not only here in Canada, also in the United States, Sheila. Same thing is happening there.
Yeah, this, Justin Trudeau thought he was bringing in future Trudeau voters who would have allegiance to him forever. But he forgot that they might actually be social conservative. And so here we are. And you know what, to the great shame of the Conservative Party of Canada, they're nowhere to be seen on this issue. And frankly,
Sheila,
it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace.
Trudeau tweeted out, thankfully, because it's going to cost him at the polls, that he's all in with the Spirit Unicorn community. Jagmeet Singh actually marched in a counter-protest, so we know exactly where he is. But where, oh, where is Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives? I came across one story. There was a gag order issued where no MPs were allowed to weigh in on this. This was the biggest news story in Canada, Sheila, yesterday. And the Conservative MPs are told to be like the three monkeys: see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Are you kidding me?
And isn't evil the right word too?
And Sheila, this is not leadership. This is the opposite of leadership. Pierre Poilievre being told by some behind-the-scenes operative to know your role and shut your mouth. Are you kidding me? You want to be the Prime Minister of Canada. I want to know where you are on this issue. You know, it's funny. On the Wilkow show yesterday afternoon, coming home from the protest, Sheila, I heard Andrew Wilkow interviewing, forgive me, I can't remember his name, but it's someone who's running to be the governor of Missouri. And when it came to this file, you knew exactly where he stood, right? He could have been a demonstrator at the Million March for Children protest yesterday. He wasn't mincing his words. He was saying what he meant, and he meant what he said. And meanwhile, the Conservative Party of Canada, stay in the penalty box, keep your mouth shut, don't answer any reporters' calls. This is unbelievable, Sheila.
Well, and I don't know if you saw, well, you'll see in my video later, but in that clip that I had from Twitter, it was like 50-50 in some parts of the protest in Regina, people holding up signs that said, "Way to go, Scott Moe." Mm-hmm. Thank you, Scott Moe. This is such an important issue. There were people in there who said, I was an NDP voter. I'm going to vote for Scott Moe because of this issue, holding up signs in support of a Conservative premier. Not only are they rallying around their parents, but they're also rallying around the people brave enough to take a stand as far as politicians go.
But Sheila, has this party not learned? Let's talk about the last disaster of 2021 with Erin O'Toole.
Freedom Convoy?
Two fantastic weeks to begin that election. And then suddenly, you know what? Gun control and carbon taxes, that seems to be a real hip thing with the, I guess, false illusion that, well, we've got the Conservatives in our corner, the grassroots Conservatives, that is. Let's reach out to the Liberals with some liberal-like policies and try to woo them over. Well, then why liberal light when I can get full liberal classic? And here we are seeing this again. And to me, this is the third misstep. You know, I mean, Pierre Poilievre, for the most part, has been saying and doing all the right things. But then when I see a story such as Warren Kinsella going through his buddy at the Toronto Sun, Brian Lilley, to get Pierre Poilievre to condemn Christine Anderson, which he did, like he was some circus mule being led around by the nose. And then when I see...
And by the way, when he did that, he threw his own MPs under the bus.
Yeah.
For meeting with her.
100%.
Smart moves.
And then when I see him, when he's asked the question, you were posing with a photo where someone was wearing a shirt, there were only two genders. Do you agree with that? Instead of saying, look, I'm here to talk about real issues, I'm not getting into that. Or instead of saying what I'd like to hear him say, yes, there are two genders, he goes, no, I don't agree with it. I mean,
I would have said, like, if we're here to talk about fashion, let's talk about Freeland's shoes.
Yeah.
Her dresses, like turn it around on them. But, he's so good at thinking on his feet sometimes on fiscal issues. He's got to get better on social issues.
100%. And Sheila, this party is playing with fire because I know the polls look really good. Some even suggesting a majority conservative government if an election were held today. But if you take for granted your grassroots supporters, you'll have what happened with Aaron O'Toole back in 2021. People aren't going to switch their vote to NDP or Liberal. They're just going to stay home. They're just not going to support you. And this was, and I hope maybe they can do some damage control. Maybe by the end of today, although I doubt it, Pierre Poilievre will say something. But missing in action is not leadership.
Right. And, there are a lot of liberals or disaffected liberals who are saying to the Conservatives, give us a reason to vote for you.
Yeah.
Give us a reason. We would love to switch parties, but you got to give us a reason. This could be the reason. It was very disorienting for me yesterday. And I know we got to move ahead because we should talk about what happened in Ottawa because Stompy the riot horses were back out again. So hide your grandmas and hide your disabled people. But it was very disorienting for me to deliver a petition, the Stop Classroom Grooming petition, to a government that is against classroom grooming. And normally I give petitions to the bad guys, right? I give them to the bad guys to say, look, 40,000 people disagree with the crazy thing that you're doing today. Well, I went to Saskatchewan to say 40,000 Canadians across this country are encouraged by your leadership and they need you to fight on. And so I delivered a petition to their education minister yesterday, and I put a nice little note that says this petition is on behalf of 40,000 of my fellow Canadians cheering for you to fight on and lead the country in this issue and to not back down. And it was weird after 3 years of fighting with the government to actually applaud a government for leading the way it was. I felt dizzy afterwards a little bit.
Terrific. Well, Sheila, I got to tell you, we're way overdue for an ad break. And on the other side, maybe we should run a video of Miss Lavoie's. Why am I freezing up with her first name? Alexa. Okay, Alexa Lavoie's experience in Montreal with the Love Trumps Hate community. Will you see that one, folks?
Come on out November 25th. It's all aboard the Freedom Train in Niagara-on-the-Lake. You can check Rebel News for updates and also the Freedom Passport site.
Tamara Leach, who led the Truckers Convoy, will be sharing the stage with some of the finest international recording artists, like the Chops Horns from New York City, who's played with Alicia Keys, Stevie Wonder, the Rolling Stones, and many more. Plus New World Sun, just off a European tour, and the legendary R&B master, Leroy Emanuel. Get on the Freedom Train with Tamara Leach. Saturday, November 25th at Niagara-on-the-Lake Central Community Center, 680 York Road. Get your tickets today at freedompassport.ca. The Freedom Train is coming. Know your rights. Know your freedoms.
Hey, Ben Shapiro here. This November, the Wilberforce Project is bringing me to Canada. If you want to fight the woke machine destroying families, join me in Calgary for my talk, hosted by the Wilberforce Project. Go to benshapirolive.ca for info and tickets.
You know, that Leroy Howard clip, Sheila, where he does that, ho, did that not, is he not channeling Hacksaw Jim Duggan?
Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
I can't tell the difference.
Oh. I know. Anyway.
Anyways, as I said, I think we do have some video of Alexa Lavoie in Montreal, going up against Antifa. Talk about not having truth in advertising. Antifa, of course, is a contraction of anti and fascist. It's so perversely ironic, isn't it, Sheila, that they use all the tactics of fascism, i.e. violence and canceling people and doxing people. And they're just horrible, horrible human beings, to tell you the truth. And hopefully some of them or most of them are going through a phase in life where they're going to have that come to Jesus moment, that they're really being pricks and they're not doing anything but being belligerent and trying to shut down freedom of speech. But in any event, let me zip it and we'll throw to Alexa's report in Montreal.
S'il vous plaît, les gars, s'il vous plaît. Ouais, non, ils sont là, ils sont en train de filmer. Ouais, tu vois là, c'est ça ce qu'on est en train de dire là. Ils sont en train de nous attaquer, puis il n'y a personne qui réagit. S'il vous plaît.
So Sheila, explain what we just saw there.
Okay, so we see somebody trying to get in between the peace and love counter-protesters and Alexa, who is standing with the parents, and Guillaume is there too. And the one man says, "Hey, don't touch the women." The man with his arms out says, "Don't touch the women." Yep. And then the guy behind him reaches out and cracks Guillaume's camera. And you can see Guillaume cleaning his lens because somebody has treated his camera to a little quick blast of Rust-Oleum.
Isn't it amazing? We don't see that kind of, those kind of tactics, rather, on the other side, Sheila. I didn't see anyone at Toronto, at least, trying to throw haymakers, bringing out spray paint cans. How odd. And again, I don't mean to be repetitive, but it's the counter demonstrators that call themselves the Love Trumps Hate community. Nothing could be further from the truth. I hope we follow up with the police, although given the Montreal Police Service is the worst in Canada, and considering Calgary is part of Canada, that's saying something, folks. But that's clearly assault captured on camera. I can tell you with me, I did give a tip of the hat to the Toronto Police Service for their role, except for one. At one point at the counter demonstration, Sheila, I was trying to interview someone, and this person, oh, and by the way, this was another observation. I've never seen so many face diapers out in public this late in 2023 as with the counter demonstrators. It's so funny that they were all wearing hats, sunglasses, face diapers, so that you could barely identify them. But he was, putting an air horn in my ear and pressing the button. And I'm telling you, Sheila, that is a form of assault. That is super loud. It's headache inducing. And there was an officer maybe 9-10 feet away. And I said, "Officer, come on, you see," this was on the third earshot that I received. I said, "Come on, can you do something about this?" And he just shrugged. And I know the philosophy, it's, well, I'm deep in enemy territory. We'll turn a blind eye to lawlessness because for us to go in and arrest this guy, the other spirit unicorns will go uber hysterical. That's not good law enforcement. That's garbage. And nobody, whether it's a demonstrator or a member of the media that these people don't like, should have to endure that.
Yeah, you know what? Let's try to keep our talking to a minimum, and let's get through some of these, like the bad behavior of the other side. Because, David, I just want to tell you, you came up in trial today. Ezra's on trial right now for writing his book, The Libranos, and your little cheeky tongue-in-cheek comment about regime change came up in court. So we'll get to that. Like the outrageousness in this country never takes a day off. It's the hardest working thing in the country is tyranny, because Ezra right now is on trial for writing a book critical of Justin Trudeau and publishing it when a book critical of Justin Trudeau would sell during the election period. Like he is in trouble. He wrote an illegal book, if you ask the the regime that David Menzies wanted changed.
Yeah,
but let's get
Sheila, what was it? 22 other books were written that year. What was it? Oh, that's right. They were all pro-Trudeau books. So nothing to see here. You can publish those during an election
24
year.
other books. But we'll go to that in a second. Let's finish it. Let's button up our coverage of the 1 million March for Children. Okay. And we'll go to just some of the bad behavior. And then you'll see all the good behavior in our reports from cities all across the country. You'll see protesters, parents, moms, dads, grandmas telling you exactly why they're there and why they're fighting for their kids. But let's talk about the bad guys for a second. So we've got a video from Lincoln, if you want to dig this up. And this is from Ottawa. Counter demonstrator at the Million March for Children blocks Kean Simone and Lincoln from walking down the street and tries to knock Lincoln's camera out of his hands. Let's roll that one.
Is this your friend?
No, I don't want to. People don't want their pictures taken. I don't know.
Get the f*** out of here. Oh, you little... What the f***?
You don't need to worry. You don't need to worry.
If Lincoln were on the left, there would be a public inquiry for that violence committed against him.
Yep. Oh, yeah. You're so right. And we know how that public inquiry would go, too. But isn't it amazing how our so-called colleagues in the media, when any of this ever happens, I mean, Sheila, you've been punched in the face by a fake feminist. I've had
You've been assaulted over again, and over again.
And the worst one being by Blackface's personal thug security guards. And not a peep. Oh, and in the case of David Akin lying about the assault, saying I was being charged, there was never a charge. That was just garden variety thuggery. But you're so right. When it happens to us, nothing to see here. If Rachel Gilmore, the unemployed journalist, has a mean tweet sent out about her, oh my God in heaven, it's the end of humanity. The double standard is so gross. You know, I just don't have words for it anymore, Sheila.
Yeah, a day that goes by on the internet that I don't get called the C word is an abnormal and unusual day. But if she gets that, she has to go to, I don't know, to get a therapy Starbucks sugary drink so she can make it through the day. Let's keep going. Bad behavior again. This one also from K2, Kean Simone. He issues a language warning. So take that for what you will. Ottawa bystander shouts at kids. Oh, God. She looks exactly how I thought she'd look. She shouts at kids participating in the pro-parents protest. She says, Mama's boy still sucking on the titty. What a vulgar, gross lady. Like, just berating kids who don't want to hear about their teacher's sex life. Really, that's what this comes down to. But anyways, let's roll the good behavior from the bad guys.
No! She's right! She's right!
I'm telling you! You're about to oh, Mama's boy! Still sucking on the city! Mommy, can I have money? Fuck you,
She's yelling at kids. Like, she's yelling at kids. What a hero this lady is. I will be amazed if I find out that she's not a public school teacher.
Oh, you know what? And will be fully protected and probably even honored for taking such a brave, courageous stance. But good Lord, can you imagine waking up to that every morning? I mean, oh, Juliet, wherefore art thou?
I'm no prize, but I'm not yelling at kids on the street. Let's go to Hamilton.
Yes.
Efron Monsanto. Like, look, this is how busy we were yesterday. Our Efron, who is in charge of all of our video production on the other side, he's the Sheila of the videos. And he was out in the field working because we just wanted to make sure we did this movement justice, because you can't trust the mainstream media. So He's got far left counter protesters screaming at a Hamilton police officer for creating a police line between them and the 1 million March for Children. So this cop says, okay, we're going to do what we are here to do, and that is keep the peace and make sure that everybody is of good behavior. Although I think that was a pretty tall order yesterday with some of these guys. Now, God, naturally, he's wearing a mask. And anyways, he's yelling at a cop. And these are the people, by the way, that the left support in this country. So the institutional left, the Liberals, the NDP, the City of Toronto, the mayors, the teachers, unions, the education system. These are the people that they are going to bat for. Well done, guys. Watch this.
Right? Do you want the support folks to be able to leave peacefully, or do you want to fucking escalate? That shit's on you. You know what? You want to be a fucking cunt, be a fucking cunt. We've opened up a lane so people could leave safely. You want to be fucking rude? Go fuck yourself. I don't know why you're starting to swearing at me. Doesn't matter. It's okay. It's funny. I thought they're promoting love.
You know, Sheila, I really think that if you have to default to profanity and if you have to default to personal insults to make your point, well, really, you don't have a point, do you?
Yeah. And, you know, and if you don't have a point, why not lie about it, as is the case with Vice. So Vice News yesterday, failing Vice News. So this is exactly the reason we had journalists out everywhere across the country, in Ottawa, in Regina, where it was 2,000 to literally a minivan's worth of activists, I called them, on the other side. You know, parents outnumbered the other side over and over again. Now, the other side is outsized in their bad behavior, so they get a lot of attention, but the peaceful marchers dwarfed the union activists, even though the union activists are well-funded, well-organized. They're having Zoom organization calls, and they've got the backing of the Liberals and the mainstream media operating as their funders, but also as their press secretaries. The parents are completely organic by and large. But Vice News says, anti-trans groups staged protests across 77 Canadian cities. You know, that should be the headline. Parents' rights demonstrators stage nationwide protests in 77 Canadian cities. That's enormous for a simultaneous Canadian protest. Anyways, they say instead they were largely outnumbered in the thousands by trans rights activists.
That's outrageous.
Really? What a bunch of BS. You just told me not to use profanity to make my point, but that's absolute BS. Anyway.
And it says anti-trans protester flees after being surrounded by trans rights activists. Well, yeah, if you're being surrounded by people who are hysterical and mentally unhinged and might even be packing a weapon or two, maybe fleeing is a good idea, you know, Sheila.
Who thinks this is a good image to promote the other side? This shows bullying and intimidation and threats. Like,
good
this
point.
is a mob surrounds you, and then the left says, oh, look at what a bunch of heroes we are. 50 of us intimidated this lone peaceful man for disagreeing with us in the public square. How do they think this image helps them? Are they that far gone? I guess they are.
They are, because you referenced it earlier, Sheila. What you hear on campus by the loony left these days is that phrase you said, punch a Nazi. Now, Nazi in their definition, that doesn't mean somebody hell-bent on world conquest, somebody trying to carry out a genocide. That means somebody who has a differing opinion. And instead of having a debate like we used to in the good old days, you use physical violence. You are entitled to throw a haymaker because you've been offended by somebody having a contrarian opinion. That's where we are. So based on that, Sheila, I can fully see why Vice is jumping up and down in glee over that image.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Ezra. He's on trial right now in Ottawa. Is it Ottawa or Toronto? I think
Toronto,
it's Ottawa.
I believe.
Is it Toronto? Someone correct me. I
Mr.
forget.
Producer?
He's traveled so much.
Yeah, I think
traveled
it's
to
in federal court in Toronto, Sheila.
Okay, he's traveled so much this week, I've lost track of where the boss is. But he's on trial for writing a book called The Libranos, which we published prior to the last election, which is when you would need information detailing the Liberals' corruption. And we also had some fun lawn signs and some fun posters, and I think even a mouse pad, which I had for the longest time till I spilled coffee on it. And so apparently his book was illegal, which Ezra says, as he says, Banana Republic. I'm on trial for writing a book about Trudeau called The Libranos. He is right when he says that this trial is so important because it's whether or not the right to criticize the government lives or dies. Like, your books in a free society should not be approved by the government, right? Like that. When you say it that way, it makes perfect sense. However, Ezra's in trouble. They're trying to catch him, as they always do, to conservatives on campaign finance violations. They're basically saying that this is a donation in kind to the Conservative Party of Canada.
Jeez.
If you criticize the Liberals. So that's what's happening right now. And as it would turn out, David's cheeky little comment that he made at one point, we can bring that up, Ezra's tweet. Elections Canada quotes David Menzies, our reporter, who cheekily called for regime change on election day. It should come as no surprise that we would love to not see the Liberals in power anymore. I think that it would be good for the country. And David is not just a journalist, but a commenter. And he's allowed to say what's on his mind, unlike, not unlike the CBC. They get to bash conservatives all the time, and they get paid to do it by the federal government. But if you do it, and I guess not take money from the feds, apparently that's a campaign finance violation. By telling the truth about the Liberals counts as a campaign finance violation, a donation in kind to the Conservatives.
Sheila, I've never seen a bigger nothing burger than that. Regime change, that's used on both sides of the political spectrum.
Sure.
It's not me saying, let's have regime change by promoting some kind of, armed insurrection. It's just a change in government. If I simply said change in government as opposed to regime change, would that have been so inflammatory? So we're just dealing with semantics here. And that's what the federal government lawyers have. That's their, shocking reveal that I said regime change. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Sheila. Do you see anything wrong there?
No. Is that a trick question? Of course not. But that is not all the government has against the boss man. Because there's something else. They're really going after us here because there's also a drawing that we did, our graphics team did. If you could bring that up. There's a very scary graphic that we did.
Not that cartoon.
Yeah, and they brought it up and they said that this is also... Ezra says, I swear to God, Elections Canada's lawyer is complaining about this. They said this is one of the reasons they convicted us of publishing an illegal book. And it was back in 2020 when the government demanded that that Ezra produce his private editorial notes as a journalist and author. They said, okay, send us your editorial notes and maybe we'll let you off the hook. Like, send us your sources of where you came to these conclusions and the evidence in your book, The Libranos. And so we did. We put this in, we had our graphics team draw up this little haha, Ezra. There's Ezra laughing as he's putting it in there. And he's writing a book, and then he made lawn signs, and then he made some money, and then there's Justin Trudeau crying in his I Like Weed t-shirt. We sent this to them as evidence of our editorial notes on the book, and they got super mad. And so that came up, of course, too.
Oh, Sheila, we're having fun with this, and it's outrageous, both what I said and that silly cartoon. But here's the deal. The X factor, as with any trial being held in front of a judge, Well, the judge is the X factor. And I know two veteran criminal lawyers, more than 30 years in the business, Sheila. They both tell me the identical thing. They, all over their career, they've gone into court saying, there's really no way my client can be found guilty on this. And guess what? At the end of the trial, guilty. And conversely, this is the proverbial shite case. My client doesn't have a hope in hell. And guess what? At the end of the trial, not guilty. That's how far the thing can swing. And you never know what the judge is thinking. So we're having a laugh at this. We think, the prosecution's case is ludicrous and ridiculous. But can we get into the brain of the judge, hearing this? No, we can't. So we'll see when that judgment is rendered. What are your feelings on if we're going to be given a fair shake here, Sheila?
I'm not sure. This is an appeal of an existing conviction. For those of you who don't know, Ezra was actually convicted of the crime of an illegal book, and then he was issued a $3,000 fine. Now, you might think we're mad to be spending tens of thousands of dollars fighting a $3,000 fine, but it's the point of it all.
Yep.
That you should not. There's no such thing as an illegal book in Canada. And I think it's pretty interesting. These people who are willing to put, who are right now calling, like the government itself is calling parents bigots for wanting to get actual pornography out of the school library, simultaneously calling an illegal book, the one Ezra wrote, full of true facts about liberal corruption. That's the problematic book for these people. But some of the things that are coming out of this courtroom, and people, if you are on Twitter or whatever they call it now, X, follow the boss. He is in court live tweeting his own trial. This is something only done at Rebel News. But anyways, he says Trudeau's lawyer said it's not enough that the censorship of Ezra's book may chill free expression. Ezra has to prove that it chilled free expression or else it's perfectly fine. So
really?
Not that, so he has to prove that it served to shut him up. Trudeau's lawyer said the fact that pro-Trudeau books continue to be published show that there isn't a chilling effect. What?
What?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. That's the point. If you write a pro-Trudeau book, you're not going to be hauled in front of this any kind of a court or a judge. I mean, that's crazy.
It gets worse.
I can see why Ezra said, I swear to God, he said that.
Trudeau's lawyer also said, we can't presume that censoring the Libranos will have a chilling effect. Okay, but how many self-published authors are willing to go up against the government to tell the truth? You would never know who self-censored because of this. You would never know. And that's the point. If you don't know what the chilling effect is, then you can't do something that would cause a chilling effect. Anyways, it's Trudeau's lawyer, Justice Department lawyer, also said that, quote, unregulated media are a threat to elections in Canada.
Oh, unregulated media? He said that? Can you imagine? Yeah. That's kind of like they're playing their cards out in the open, isn't it, Sheila? We want to control and regulate you.
Are they really a threat to elections or Justin Trudeau's re-election efforts? That's, I think, what's going on there.
Unbelievable. Well, Sheila, I cannot believe it. We're already past 2 p.m. and I'm not sure if we had some super chats come in.
We do. We've got $5 from Kane and Mark. He says, I'm excited to see my favorite power couple.
Well, that is so nice. A power couple. I never imagined being 50% of a power couple. But what an honor it is to be with Sheila Gunn Reid. She is a powerful, strong woman. And she's not playing any mini golf on this international mini golf. She's going to the real golf course.
I like going to the driving range. Yeah, we're like Donnie and Marie. I'm a little bit country. He's a little bit rock and roll or yacht rock radio, depending. Let's keep going. Let's go. Fraser McBurney, fight the fines recidivist with a real affinity for caps lock. Gives us $5 and says, from every hamlet to big city, what is success? The million man march was, or should I say the 2 million man march was. Now it's time to elect a responsible school board, fire the loonies. Well, you know what? The fear of the left and the fear of these activist unions, it reveals a lot about how rattled they are about this first just little taste of resistance after 4 decades of their unabated madness in the classroom. The first time parents stand up and they lose their marbles, it makes me so happy to see. Push on.
With good reason, Sheila. They know what happened in Virginia. They know what happened, that at the school board level, the lowest level of public elected office in North America, that brought around regime change on election day when the Republican defeated the Democrat. That all stemmed from those school board protests. So it's not theoretical what can happen.
Yep. Chris K-Gel gives us $5. I don't care what type of friction you like in your bedroom. It's not your right to indoctrinate children. Yeah. I remember seeing my grade 6 science teacher one time in church, and he had his wife and his kids with him. And I was like shocked to find out he wasn't just some sort of education robot. Like, to find out that he was like a human being with a life was weird to me, because they didn't talk about their personal lives to other people's kids. And that's how it should be. Take us back to that better time. I don't want my kid to know anything about you. Your likes, your dislikes, who you're married. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't want you to talk to my kid about what you did on the weekend. Just teach, if you wouldn't mind, please.
But Sheila, we live in the day and age of woke mathematics, where if little Johnny or Janie answers the question of 2 + 2 = 5, it's not necessarily the right answer, but it's not the wrong answer either. It's very fluid, right? I can only imagine 20, 30 years from now, the kind of graduates we're going to get out of school if we don't put our foot down in terms of indoctrination trumping education, Sheila. It's going to be a scary sampling, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, China is teaching kids complex mathematics in grade 5 and 6, and we are teaching them, well, maybe you're a cat. So the world is going to get taken over, and it's going to be because of this nonsense. And maybe we have it coming. Nanny Love 22 gives us $5. Any truth to a news video from India stating that Trudeau's plane may have been delayed due to finding drugs on board? You two are the best. You know what? I wouldn't be shocked to find out that were the case, because just certain drugs being legal, depending on what province you're in, all of them are legal. So would it surprise me? I don't know, but I think it's less complicated than that. Although I think I might file an access to information request in a couple of days here, just once the frantic emails get shot around amongst the Department of Defense, who are in charge of the Challenger. I don't know any credibility to this article or not. I think it's probably just less complicated. Justin Trudeau is inconsequential in India and inconsequential at an Indian airport, and he is not a high priority. And so they probably just couldn't get his plane off the tarmac because they don't care about him. And it was a final insult after he spends so much of his time insulting them.
And if it's true, Sheila, it would add fuel to the fire that this whole allegation of an assassination of a Canadian on Canadian soil is being driven by Trudeau in a malicious fashion for getting back at India for the way he's been humiliated twice now. Again, this is diplomacy 101, a huge violation, Sheila, in that if you have something that serious, and that is serious, an ally, another democratic state, allegedly killing a Canadian on Canadian soil, then you can't go by allegations and hearsay. You have to be 100% positive this is a fact. And we don't have that information, do we?
No, that's exactly it.
What a fiasco.
Yep. Okay, let's keep going. We've got another one from Sharon Donner, 78. It's $1. So what's the lesson here, people at home? Sometimes if you donate under the limit, we'll read your comment anyway. Gives us $1. I have watched the various location filmings. I was at the Kitchener City Hall event with, of course, the 1 million March for Children group standing up for my 5 children.
Good.
Yeah, great. Fraser McBurney again. Look at the black shirts arresting and pushing peaceful Canadian marchers. Who else in history dressed in black shirts? We all have memories of Germany. Yeah, the Antifa thugs. They're the worst. By the way, just based on some of Ezra's tweets, he thinks the judge is against us. In court today, it's Justice Strickland. Ezra says in one of his tweets, this judge is fine with the idea of authors being summoned to disclose their plans to the government. And another tweet from Ezra, Judge Strickland is asking a series of questions to Rebel News super lawyer Aaron that seem unsettlingly fine with the idea of publishers being required to disclose their publication plans to the government. Creepy. Now, this is far different than what happened to me in Alberta. I also was almost in trouble for the same crime. My book, I think it was Stop Notley, about the NDP's reign of terror here in Alberta, and it included exactly what Ezra's book did, a marketing campaign that was fun little lawn signs and a billboard, and we launched it right before the election, which is when a book about the last government in power would sell. And I was interrogated by an ex-cop working for the elections commissioner about why I wrote the book, and I just recorded the conversation.
I remember that well, yes.
They just dropped the issue.
Yeah. Well, he came across as a first-class ass, that guy.
Well, yeah, he wasn't... I don't think that he knew what he was up against. I think he just thought, oh, there's this lady journalist who wrote a book and let's go slap her with a fine. And we had pulled documents knowing that the fix was in. They basically convicted us before they even tried to interrogate me. And then they said, actually, no, wait, mulligan. And they decided, actually, no, we didn't mean to do that. And then they withdrew the fine against me. So I almost had an elections finance conviction. And I think I did have an elections finance conviction. But then they were like, actually, no, we're not going to give you that $5,000 fine. We're going to rescind that now that you publicly embarrassed us by recording our conversations together. So, but this is going completely the other way for Ezra because they've convicted him, fined him. He's appealing, and it sounds like the judge is straight out of Orwell.
Is there another appeal that can be launched if things do not go our way, Sheila?
I'm not sure. We'll find out. Ezra's in court. I'm sure he'll have an update. I think his Ezra Levant show today is on the trial, and with that, people will know exactly what happened. You'll get Ezra's thoughts on what went down, and I don't think we'll know whether or not the appeal is denied today. I think we'll probably get that judgment at a later date, but people will know how they can get involved to help Ezra, because this is not just about us. This is about your right to criticize the government in whatever venue you want, including books and on social media.
Isn't it amazing, Sheila? And yet the silence is deafening when it comes to media organizations, PEN Canada.
I was going to say, where are those jerks? Where are those jerks at PEN Canada who take my $75 or whatever it is a year so that I can be a member of PEN Canada because I'm an author, a censored author at that. And I join every year. I pay my membership dues just so I can, in good faith, complain when they do nothing. Wow. Because they have my money, they're doing nothing.
Sounds like to me, Sheila, you're overpaying by $74.99.
I know. Let's keep going. So anyways, yes, Ezra's subscribers only show on rebelnewsplus.com. I'm sure he'll have more thoughts about what happened in court today. One last chat before we go from Snowy Roof. Remember Edmonton when a teacher was fired for giving a student a 0 for assignment not being turned in? I know exactly that. His name was Lyndon Dorval.
Yep.
And he was a teacher, and the kid didn't do the work, so he marked it appropriately, and he was the guy who got in trouble.
I remember
And,
that story well.
Yep. Yep.
How can he give any mark of any quantity for an assignment that was never handed in? But what was the deal there, Sheila? The student had his feelings hurt, even though he did zero work.
Yep.
And no one is deserving of anything less than 51%. That teacher is a hero for standing up against the tyranny of the school board in that case. And I wonder how many of those teachers remain in our school, Sheila. The ones that are basing their decisions, I don't know, on this crazy concept called merit as opposed to hurt feelings. That's what I truly wonder. And if those teachers do exist, I fear with the cancel culture that we live in, they know it's best for their financial wherewithal to keep their mouths shut because you're going up against, basically leftist tyranny today.
That was 9 years ago, by the way. Lyndon Dorval, he said he didn't want any publicity, and he wasn't trying to be anybody's hero. He was just trying to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And what happened was he was fired from the school, and he was under attack from his union for unprofessional conduct.
Sheila, it's like you wouldn't believe this if you saw this on an episode of Monty Python's Flying Circus. He's the professional. He's the adult in the room. These other woke idiots are the ones that are generating a graduation class in which little Johnny and Janie can't spell cat if you spotted them the C and the T.
Yeah. So here's what happened. He was suspended and eventually fired from his job teaching physics at Ross Shep in Edmonton in 2012 for giving out zeros, which was against school policy. He took it to the Provincial Appeals Board, which ruled that Dorval was treated unfairly, but he still had to face charges of unprofessional conduct from the ATA, that's the teachers union, for his actions related to the incident. He was accused of failing to follow the school's policy, not returning students' exams to the school, and not attending staff meetings. I wouldn't attend staff meetings at that pit of jackals either. He said the complaint was brought before the union. So this is the superintendent trying to get two kicks at the same can here. The complaint was brought before the union by the very same superintendent who fired him. And then, in a 2-day hearing, he was cleared of all professional conduct allegations against him. There was 3 of them. And it wasn't a complicated decision. He said he didn't want to be anybody's hearing. So they ruined this guy's life, kicked him out of his career for doing the right thing. And so, again, what's the moral of the story here? There are a lot of good teachers who are against this indoctrination madness in the school, but they don't want to get Lyndon Dorval.
Yeah. Because once again, Sheila, the process is the penalty, isn't it?
Yep. And don't expect your union to stick up for you. Just keep paying them dues.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're treated unfairly, they will also go after you.
Well, the way school boards and school unions are these days, Sheila, it's 2 sides of the same coin. They're all a bunch of jolly Marxists. Actually, I shouldn't say jolly. Miserable Marxists is
they're
a
a surly
descriptor.
bunch.
Yeah. And so you're not going to get any safe harbor by the union that you pay your monthly dues to. They're on Team Woke School Board. It's despicable.
I think we're done, actually.
Okay.
I think we're all wrapped up. Yeah, that's it. We're good. We're 25 minutes over time. I think that's it. No more chats. We're done.
Well, there you go. We supersized the live stream. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you especially to those who gave us a donation. We greatly appreciate that. And thank you to super producers Efren and Olivia behind the boards, and of course my beloved co-host. I believe 2 members of the Alberta team will be doing the live stream tomorrow, Friday. And in the meantime, as always, stay safe and stay sane.